The Siege of Leningrad, a siege that led to cannibalism. The Siege of Leningrad was the Soviet siege of the city of Leningrad, perpetrated by the Nazis. The Siege of Leningrad was a prolonged military blockade from the south by the German Army Group North against the Soviet city of Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, on the Eastern Front in World War II. The Finnish army invaded from the north, cooperating with the Germans until Finland recaptured territory lost in the Winter War, but refused to advance any further into the city. It also cooperated with the Germans from August 1942. In August, the Spanish Blue Division was moved to the southeastern flank of the Leningrad encirclement, south of the Neva near the towns of Pushkin and Kolpino, and its main intervention was in Krasny Bor in the Azora River area. The siege began on September 8, 1941, when the Wehrmacht cut off the last road into the city. Although the Soviet army was able to open a narrow passage into the city on January 18, 1943, the Red Army was not able to break the siege until January 27, 1944, a mere 872 days from the start. The siege was one of the longest and most destructive in history, and possibly the deadliest, due to the massive casualties and deaths suffered throughout. In the 21st century, some historians have labeled the event a genocide, due to the systematic starvation and deliberate destruction of the city's civilian population. The capture of Leningrad was one of the three strategic objectives of the German Operation Barbarossa and the primary objective of Army Group Northern. The strategy was motivated by Leningrad's political status as the former capital of Russia and the symbolic capital of the Russian Revolution, its military importance as the main base of the Soviet Baltic Fleet, its strong industrial area, and the location of numerous munitions factories. In 1939, the city was responsible for only 11% of the Soviet Union's total industrial output. Adolf Hitler was reportedly so confident in his capture of Leningrad that he had printed out invitations for a large number of guests to a victory celebration to be held at the city hotel, the Astoria. Although various theories have been put forward about Germany's plans for Leningrad, including its designation as the capital of the new Reich province of Inchmanland in General Plan Ost, it is clear that Hitler intended to destroy the city and its population. According to orders sent directly to Army Group North on September 29, after the defeat of Soviet Russia, no one would be interested in the continued existence of this large urban center. After the city was surrounded, any request for negotiated surrender would be rejected, as the problems of relocation and feeding the population could not and should not be solved by us. In this war, it is only for our survival. We are not interested in feeding even a part of the population of this large city. Hitler's ultimate goal was to burn Leningrad to the ground and give the area north of the Neva River to Finland. Siege of Leningrad. The Finnish Secret Intelligence Service had only broken some of the Soviet military codes and read their low-level communications. This was of great benefit to Hitler. The Finnish army had continuously requested intelligence on Leningrad. The role of Finland in Operation Barbarossa was defined in Hitler's Order 21. The bulk of the Finnish army will have its own mission, followed by the northern flank offensive of the German army, to stop the Russian, Soviet, Supreme Forces by an attack to the west or both sides of Lake Ladoga. The last railway line to Leningrad was cut off on August 30, when the Germans reached the Neva River. On September 8, the road to the besieged city was cut off. When the Germans reached Lake Ladoga at Schlüsselburg, only the land corridor between Lake Ladoga and Leningrad remained unoccupied by the Axis. The bombing on September 8 caused 178 fires. On September 21, the German Army General Headquarters considered the means of destroying Leningrad. The occupation would be cut off in order to make us responsible for the provision of food. The conclusion was that the city would be surrounded and devastated by the bombing, and the population would starve. Early next year we would enter the city if the Finns had started first. We do not object to bring the survivors into Russia or take them captive. Eradicate Leningrad from the face of the earth by its razing, and surrender the area north of the Nerva River to the Finns. On October 7, Hitler issued a further order, signed by Alfred Jodl, warning the Army Group North not to accept surrender. The siege lasted 872 days, from 1941 to 1944, and caused misery and millions of deaths. In 2017, diaries of survivors of the siege were discovered, describing the hardships and atrocities the people endured and suffered in the face of starvation. Boston University interviewed survivors of the event, who at that time, the survivors were still young children, but today they are old people, no less than 90 years old. The survivors gave things such as family documents, letters, and diaries for them to study. The records that were given described the starvation and hunger that the people experienced. Some wrote that they were turning into animals, and there was nothing worse than when all thoughts were food. The Siege of Leningrad was ordered by Adolf Hitler, the leader of the Nazi Party, to destroy palaces, important places, factories, roads, and hospitals, and to cut off waterways, causing the people to starve. Many records also describe streets filled with people who looked like walking bones, emaciated, and whose bodies would violently tremble just by breathing lightly. When faced with a situation that was no different from being in hell, many people had to do everything to survive, even things they had never done or thought of doing before. A young girl wrote in her diary that her father had killed the family dog and cooked it for food. In addition, about 1,500 people in Leningrad were arrested for cannibalism. The publication of these records made people see the cruelty of war. And it was revealed that the enemy of the Leningrad people at that time was starvation. The Siege of Leningrad resulted in the deaths of 2 million people. War never truly won anyone, and innocent people suffered for things they did not do.